Hello, Rama Rama Pupoda. Hope all are in good health, feeling great, wonderful, having a nice, happy, peaceful life. Now let's go to chapter 36, part 3, The Mysterious Ways of God. Ramdas' stay in Srinagar by this time had extended over 2 months, and the coveted pilgrimage to Amarnath was fast approaching. Janakinath argued with Ramdas a great deal and made an attempt to dissuade him from the proposed pilgrimage. He expatiated on the severity of the cold in that region and the difficult ascents on the hills that led up to it, but Ramdas was determined. Ramcharandas now suddenly turned up. He was very emaciated and his feet were worn out and full of blisters. Since they separated near Padankot in the Punjab, he said that he had to undergo most dreadful trials and hardships, what with the cold, continuous tramping on foot, and often starvation. He had been reduced to a terrible plight. With perfect rest added to the tender care and nursing of the loving daughters of Janakinath, he soon became his old self again. In the company of Mother Taravati, wife of Janakinath, and her small children, Ramdas and Ramcharandas went for the darshan of Kir Bhavani, about 10 miles from the city. This shrine is situated beneath the vast spreading branches of the Chena with the river Sindhu flowing on two sides of it. It is noted for the temple of goddess Bhavani. The temple, a small structure, is in the center of the grounds, erected at the edge of a deep rectangular pit constructed of brick and cement. This pit is intended for receiving presents of rice and milk pudding offered to the goddess. This is a favorite prasad, hence her name Kir Bhavani. The accumulation of pudding thrown into the pit by hundreds of devotees who daily visited the shrine gave out a stench that filled the atmosphere. No effort was made to keep the pit clean. Maybe there was some religious significance in allowing the pudding to rot in the pit. Mother Taravati performed her puja of the goddess with the help of a Pandit priest. By evening, they returned to Janakinath's house at Srinagar. How do you like the spot? Kir Bhavani asked Janakinath. The place is all right, but it is a pity that the goddess should be imprisoned for all the time in the midst of the most nauseating odor emanating from the Kir Kun, replied Ramdas. True, that is also my observation, he said laughing. One evening, a short time before the day fixed for starting on the pilgrimage to Amarnath, Janakinath said to Ramdas, Swamiji, I wish so much I could accompany you on the yatra to Amarnath, but God's will is different. My new appointment does not admit of my availing leave just at present. However, one of my relations with his family intends going. He will have a tent of his own. I have requested him to include you and Ramcharandas in his party, and he has agreed. I am also arranging for warm clothing for you both. The day of departure came. It was to be on the morrow. The previous evening, Janakinath met Ramdas with a downcast face, his heart sorely disturbed. The fact was, his relation had turned turtle at almost the last hour with regard to taking Ramdas with him to Amarnath, and had sent word to that effect. Hence the dejection on the face of the friend. Swamiji, he said, it appears to be the will of God that you should not go to Amarnath, else my relation would not have withdrawn his promise at the last moment. At this, Ramdas drew himself up, and his body stiffened with a grim determination. Ramji, Ramdas replied with a firm and measured tone, looking directly into the eyes of Janakinath. Do you think that Ramdas proposed to start on the journey to Amarnath depending on your relation? God, whose servant and child he is, had put the idea into his head, and it is his to see that it is fulfilled. There is nothing impossible for the Lord. he will yet see that Ramdas is safely led up to the shrine of Amarnath. Now Janakinath, who was observing the mood in which Ramdas was and the force with which he spoke, calmly replied, "Well, Swamiji, I am mistaken. Surely there could be no obstacle for you when you have resolved upon doing a thing." The subject was then dropped. On the banks of Jhelum, there is a temple of Shiva, only about 50 yards from Janakinath's house. The pujari of the temple, Tarachand Bayu, a young man who had love and regard for Ramdas, used to visit Janakinath's house to see and have talks with him. Some of the old type Pandits can understand Hindi and also talk in that language with a mixture of Urdu words. Ramdas mostly talked in Hindi with the ladies and the Pandits who were not English educated. Tara Chand Bayu would take Ramdas to his temple for bath in the river. Many an evening he had spent in the shrine listening to the reading of Yoga Vasishta in Hindi and attending the evening puja in the temple. When Sanskrit shlokas and mantras were sung in chorus by a dozen devotees who would be present at the time of worship. On the morning of the day when Ramdas had to start on the Amarnath Yatra, Tarachand Bayu dropped in and escorted him to the temple. Ramcharan Das was also with him. After bath, Ramdas sat in front of the image on an asan provided by the pujari. The time might have been about 8 o'clock. A young Pandit, who was a perfect stranger to Ramdas, entered the temple in haste. He had come on a bicycle and inquired for Ramdas. The pujari brought the Pandit into the presence of Ramdas. "Swamiji," the young man said to Ramdas, "my father is making ready for the trip to Amarnath. He wishes to take you also with him. Kindly come with me. He is awaiting your arrival at home." Strange are the ways of God. Here is a Pandit, utterly unknown to Ramdas, voluntarily proposing to have him as his companion on the trip. He followed the young guide but told him that he would have first to see Janakinath and inform him of his intending departure. So they went to Janakinath's house and apprised the friend of the arrangement made by God for the yatra. Janakinath, on hearing of it, was spellbound. Until then, it had seemed that there was not the least chance of Ramdas leaving that day. The mysterious and sudden way God brought about circumstances that favored his going struck Janakinath as purely the work of providence. The Lord, after all, did not will that Ramdas should abandon the idea. Ramdas, for his part, was absolutely confident that he would go on the pilgrimage. The warm dress intended for Ramdas and Ramcharan Das was still with the tailor unfinished. A woolen cap and double breast jacket were intended for Ramdas and a long cloak of the same material for Ramcharan Das. Ramdas did not care for the clothes. He felt God's command as come, and it was his to obey at any cost. So with 2 small pieces of kadar cloth he started. It was decided that Ramcharan Das to start on the following day with a woolen dress and meet Ramdas at Matan or Matant, the first stage in the journey where there would be a halt for 2 days. Ramdas duly reached the pilgrim Pandit's house where he took meals. The Pandit was an elderly man, tall and strongly built. By 12 o'clock, they got into a motor bus which carried them by evening to Mutton. That's all, folks. Let's see in the next chapter. Thank you. Bye bye. Rama Rama Pupoda.